Wes, this is probably the most exciting day for me to have you in the podcast studio because you are the Executive Director of the Branson Centre of Entrepreneurship South Africa. That means you're my boss, but also probably the best person placed to talk to us about changing business for good. So welcome and thank you for taking time out to be in the studio with me.
Thanks, Nwabisa. That's great.
So Wes, tell us a little bit more about who you are, and hopefully that will paint a picture as to why we think you're the right person to talk to us about changing business for good.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm Wesley. I'm a father, a husband, a serial entrepreneur, probably to intrapreneur, looking to just fulfill my purpose, which is to leave the world in a better place. And I do that through the work we do with entrepreneurs in enabling them to become purpose-led and change business for good.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the favorite things, since I've been working with you and watching you lead the Branson Centre is that if I did a word cloud of the word that Wesley uses the most on any given date is this word purpose. And so you've already beaten me at one of the questions I had for you, which was, what is your purpose? But because it's so front and center of everything that you do, you introduce yourself by talking about purpose. And so you're absolutely the right person to be talking to us about changing business for good. So what do we mean when we say changing business for good?
Well, changing business for good is essentially being purpose-led. Understanding what your purpose is important to the impact that you're going to have on people's lives, on your employees, the communities you operate, and the broader environment.
Okay. And so I think sometimes when we talk about changing business for good, entrepreneurs can feel a bit far away from this, or they think that this is something that can happen only when they've made a certain amount of money and perhaps it can drift into CSI. When we talk about changing business for good for entrepreneurs who are growing their businesses, what kind of examples can they look to in order to be inspired or at least think about, hey, I see somebody else is doing that. I can do that from my little corner.
Well, it's not just for successful entrepreneurs, right? I mean, changing business for good is more than, CSI or, the social project or the trees you plant on Arbour Day, right? It's about how and what you do every day in your business, the decisions you make that are going to fundamentally not only have a broader impact on the environment and the communities you operate in, but also position your business differently. Consumers and customers are more likely to recommend brands that are purpose-led, that have a positive environmental or community impact through what they do as business, not through one-off initiatives through their businesses.
It's interesting because I was reading in one of those worldly or world-renowned newspapers that comes out on a Friday, and it was talking about purpose being one of those woolly concepts that people don't really know what it means. And yet I know when I've been in conversation with you, you've actually been quite clear and you've understood that there are specific benefits that businesses can see when they are purpose-led and therefore are changing business for good. Are you able to maybe describe some of those benefits? I know some of them are specific to statistics and numbers. We don't have to remember those. But I thought there were some interesting insights that came through around what it means for a business when it is purpose-led and what that benefit is.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research, in fact, that backs up, what the benefits are to being purpose-led are. But I think more importantly, what we've seen and what we've felt through the businesses we work with is, stronger commitment and more loyal customer base, in particular. One that's critically important for me and the work that we do in the Branson Centre as well is attracting and retaining talent. People are going to follow the businesses that they believe in, the stories that they understand, and the impact that they want to be a part of in the world. And so, attracting the right talent starts by being purpose-led and bringing in people that want to have an impact in that same way. whom are generally more loyal, more engaged with the work that they're doing every day. And so that's really critical to not only the success of the business, but the impact that that business can have as a good business.
Yeah. Somebody might say, okay, this journey of getting to a point where my business is a force for good and is changing business for good, it sounds expensive. Is this not at the detriment of my profitability?
Well, it's going to drive your profit, right? I mean, being a force for good shouldn't be something that you do on the wayside. It should be part of your everyday operations. And in doing so, that, positions you differently in such a way that, it gives you your competitive edge. It enables you to really focus on becoming future fit, more and more. Customers, our employees, the broader community and the broader environment we work with demand that change. And we as business leaders and businesses, are required to drive that change to ensure that we are around in the future and we're still relevant.
Yeah. And I like the idea of bringing in even the notion of future fit. And so it would be remiss not to even reflect on what living through a pandemic has meant for businesses. And so in your observation, what did you see with regards to purpose-led businesses and how they performed during the pandemic?
Well, purpose is something to lean on during difficult times. Purpose helps you sort of not or avoid mission drift. And so during the pandemic, what we'd seen is that businesses that went back to their true purpose, and it centered that everything they did around the core of what their purpose was and meant for them, meant that they were able to adapt and change in those environments and focus on the impact that they have during the pandemic.
What's the purpose of the Branson Centre?
We exist to change business for good. And so we partner with businesses to help build thriving communities and a thriving planet for all.
This has been lots of fun. That was almost me testing you and see if my boss knows what the purpose of the Branson Centre is. And so, Wes, to wrap this conversation up, I'm going to go into the quickfire questions, which once we're done, I'm sure you'll give me quickfire questions in every meeting going forward. And so, changing business for good means?
To be purpose-led.
A purpose-led business is?
Someone that understands their reason for being and what the core focus is of their business, why they exist.
Leading a purpose-led business means?
Leading by example.
Okay. Wes, thank you so much for stealing some time out of your diary to spend with me here in the studio. I could talk a lot more about changing business for good, but as you said, it's about the action, making it happen, and I hope entrepreneurs listening to this podcast are inspired and understand that changing business for good is in their everyday.
Thanks for having me.
Yay!